My granddaughter posted naked photos of me online, exposing me to ridicule. The phrase echoed in my mind, an incessant hammer pounding against the wall of my dignity. I, Mia, a 68-year-old woman who had always valued discretion and respect, watched my world collapse with a single click. The humiliation was a physical, sharp, and piercing pain that settled in my chest, stealing my breath and my ability to think. My dignity, built over decades of hard work as a history teacher in a Boston public school and a life dedicated to family, was pulverized in seconds. I vividly remember that Tuesday morning, the autumn sun filtering through my living room curtains as I sipped my morning tea. The phone rang. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, her voice trembling and full of pity. "Mia, dear, have you seen what's circulating online? It's terrible, simply terrible." My heart began to pound erratically. At that moment, I had no idea the extent of the cruelty my own granddaughter, Sarah, just 22 years old, had perpetrated. With trembling hands, I picked up my tablet, a birthday gift from Sarah that I barely knew how to use, and opened the link Mrs. Henderson had sent me. The screen revealed the horror, photos of me, taken in moments of intimacy and vulnerability, exposed for the entire world to see. They weren't naked photos in a vulgar sense, but they were images that should never have left my personal album, much less been shared without my consent. They were photos from a relaxed moment by the pool in the backyard of my Cape Cod home, from a home spa day, from a time when I blindly trusted Sarah. The caption, written by her, was even crueler, mocking my age and my body with malicious comments about grandma trying to be young. I felt my blood run cold. How could the girl I raised with so much love, whom I helped pay for design school and buy her first car, do something so monstrous? The betrayal was a poison running through my veins, more painful than any physical ache. If you've ever felt the pain of betrayal from someone you least expected, you know what I'm talking about. If this story resonates with you, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to follow how this publicly humiliated grandmother found the strength to rise again and turn the tables. The shame was overwhelming, but from the ashes of my reputation, a silent and devastating plan began to form. A plan she would never forget. The pain of humiliation was deep, but it wasn't the first time life had tested me. I, Mia, had always been a woman of grit. I grew up on a small farm in Iowa, learning early on the value of hard work and resilience. Life taught me to be strong. I lost my parents young, raised my younger brother, and later faced widowhood at 50 when my beloved husband, Robert, passed away unexpectedly. It was I who kept the family together, who ensured my children had a good education, and who always offered a safe harbor for everyone. Sarah, my granddaughter, was the apple of my eye. Since she was little, she spent summers with me in Cape Cod, and I'd take her fishing on the pier, teach her to bake apple pies, and tell her stories about American history. I saw her as an extension of myself, the promise of a bright future. I always supported her in everything. When she decided to study design in New York, it was I who encouraged her, who helped her get scholarships, and who secretly supplemented her expenses so she could live comfortably. I bought her her first car, a used Honda Civic, so she'd have independence. I paid for expensive summer courses and always defended her when my children thought she was being too spoiled. My love for Sarah was unconditional, a love that asked for nothing in return, only her happiness. That's why her betrayal hit me in a way no other pain had. It wasn't just the public shame, it was the breaking of a sacred trust, the destruction of a bond I believed to be unbreakable. How could she forget all the sacrifices, all the sleepless nights, all the advice, and all the support I had given her? Deep down, I knew Sarah wasn't a bad person. She was young, impulsive, and perhaps influenced by a circle of friends who valued online attention above all else. But that didn't lessen the pain. On the contrary, it made it more complex, harder to understand. I wondered if I had failed at some point, if my unconditional love had made her blind to the consequences of her actions. But as tears rolled down my face, a flame of determination began to burn within me. I wasn't just a humiliated grandmother, I was Mia, the woman who had overcome countless adversities, who had built a life based on principles and values, and I wouldn't allow the cruelty of a young woman, no matter how much I loved her, to define my end. That act of humiliation, which Sarah thought would destroy me, was actually transforming me. It was forcing me to look inward, to find a strength I didn't even know I still possessed. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the photos and the story behind them were on all the family WhatsApp groups, my friends' Facebook feeds, and to my horror, even on some local Boston gossip sites. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was shocked friends, indignant relatives, and even some former students sending me messages of support. But deep down, I knew they were curious too. Every ring, every message was a reminder of my exposure, my vulnerability. I felt like a cornered animal with the eyes of the whole world on me. The humiliation wasn't limited to the virtual world. The next day, when I went to the local grocery store where I'd shopped for over 30 years, I felt the stares, the whispers. People who used to greet me with a smile now averted their gaze or looked at me with a mix of pity and judgment. Mrs. Peterson, who always gave me a warm hug, just waved from afar, her face flushed. I felt dirty, ashamed, as if I had committed a crime. My reputation, which I had built with such care, was in tatters. The pain was unbearable, but amidst it, a cold, calculating anger began to grow. Sarah, for her part, seemed oblivious to the devastation she had caused. Her social media, which I started monitoring with the help of a younger friend, showed her posting selfies with friends, attending parties in New York, living her life as if nothing had happened. There wasn't a shred of remorse, no mention of my name, no apology. That indifference was the catalyst. It was the moment pain turned into determination. I couldn't allow her to get away with it, to continue her life without understanding the gravity of her actions. I started to think, not about revenge in a petty sense, but about justice, about a lesson she would never forget, a lesson about respect, about the consequences of actions, and about the true value of dignity. I didn't have money for expensive lawyers or a prolonged legal battle, but I had something more valuable: intelligence, experience, and a network of contacts I had cultivated throughout my life. The ashes of my reputation wouldn't be my end. They would be the fertile ground where my silent and devastating plan would begin to blossom. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I would make Sarah face the mirror and see the reflection of her own actions. And the world, oh, the world would bear witness. The anger and pain gave me a clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't a woman of explosive confrontations, but rather of well thought out strategies, like those I taught my students about the great battles of history. If Sarah wanted a war, she'd get one, but it would be a war fought on my terms, with intelligence and patience. The first step was to seek counsel. I called my son David, a respected lawyer in New York, who, despite being shocked by Sarah's actions, initially suggested a softer approach. "Mom, maybe she didn't realize the gravity. We can ask her to remove the photos, maybe a lawyer's letter." "David," I interrupted him, my voice firm, "your sister, my daughter, raised me to be a strong woman. I'm not going to hide or beg. Sarah needs to understand that actions have consequences, and I don't just want the photos removed. I want her to learn a lesson that will make her grow." David, knowing my determination, sighed. "All right, Mom, what do you have in mind?" I explained to him that I didn't want a public legal battle that could further tarnish the family name. My goal was poetic justice, a turning of the tables that would make her feel the weight of her choices. David, with his sharp legal mind, began to help me map out Sarah's vulnerabilities. Sarah, despite her seemingly glamorous life on social media, relied heavily on my financial support. I paid the rent for her apartment in a trendy Brooklyn neighborhood, her car insurance, and even a significant portion of her design postgraduate tuition. Furthermore, I had invested a considerable sum in her small graphic design business, which she was trying to launch. David informed me that since the investments were documented as interest-free loans and the apartment was in my name, I had legal leverage. "Mom, you have more control than you think," he said. "But this could be a harsh blow for her." "She dealt me an even harsher blow, David," I replied, my voice unwavering. "And what I did to her would never be forgotten by the world." With the plan in mind, I began to act. The first measure was the most emotionally difficult. I called the building manager of Sarah's apartment in Brooklyn and, with David's help, initiated the process of reclaiming the apartment. The lease agreement, which I had co-signed, allowed me to terminate the arrangement with 30 days' notice. "Mia, are you sure?" asked Mrs. Rodriguez, the manager, who had known me for years. "It's a difficult decision, but a necessary one," I replied, feeling a pang in my heart but maintaining my composure. Sarah would receive the notice soon. Next came the financial cutoff. I canceled the supplementary credit card she used, stopped the monthly transfers to her account, and notified the university that I would no longer be responsible for her postgraduate tuition. Every call, every email was an act of pain, but also of empowerment. I was dismantling, piece by piece, the safety net I had built for her myself. It wasn't out of malice, but so that she would feel for the first time the full weight of responsibility for her own choices. Sarah, of course, didn't take long to notice. My phone, which had been silent before, began to ring incessantly. They were furious calls, text messages filled with indignation and disbelief. "Grandma, what are you doing? My card isn't working. What happened to the rent? Have you gone crazy?" She didn't mention the photos, the humiliation, the betrayal, just the loss of her privileges. That confirmed my suspicions. She still hadn't connected her actions to their consequences. I ignored all her attempts to contact me. David advised me to keep my distance, to let her feel the full impact. He knew that for the lesson to be learned, she needed to face reality alone. Meanwhile, the photos on the gossip site began to gain more attention. Some comments were supportive of me, others were cruel, but most were morbidly curious. I knew the exposure was painful, but it was a price I was willing to pay for Sarah to understand the gravity of exposing someone's life without consent. The stage was set, and the play, though painful, was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Sarah appeared at my door in Cape Cod. She was pale, with deep dark circles under her eyes and wrinkled clothes, a shadow of the vibrant granddaughter I knew. The car I had bought her was parked on the street, dirty and with a flat tire. She knocked on the door with contained fury, but when I opened it, her eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, please tell me what's going on. I have nowhere else to go. I was evicted from the apartment, my card was canceled, the college called me, I don't even have money to eat." I stared at her, my heart aching, but my expression unwavering. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm and firm, "you sent me a message saying you'd rather be without a mother than cross a man you'd known for 2 years. You publicly humiliated me, exposed me to ridicule, destroyed my dignity. And now you come here, complaining about the loss of privileges I gave you?" She recoiled, shocked by my frankness. But the photos, it was just a joke, Grandma. I didn't think it would cause all this." "A joke, Sarah?" I asked, my voice rising a notch. "Do you think exposing your grandmother's intimacy to the whole world is a joke? Do you think the shame I felt, the looks of pity and judgment, the destruction of my reputation, all of that is a joke?" Tears began to stream down her face. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I didn't think. I was angry at you for criticizing me because of my boyfriend, Mark. He said you were controlling, that I needed to break free from your influence. The mention of Mark, a young man Sarah was dating and whom I disapproved of for his negative influence, ignited a new flame of anger in me. "So you preferred to believe a stranger you'd known for a few months over the grandmother who raised you, who loved you unconditionally, who sacrificed so much for you?" I questioned. "You used me as a pawn in a game of rebellion, Sarah. And now you're reaping the consequences." She collapsed to the floor, crying uncontrollably. "I didn't know, Grandma. I swear I didn't know it would be like this. Mark abandoned me as soon as the money ran out. He said I was an idiot for losing the golden goose." The truth, though painful, was finally coming to light. Seeing Sarah there, desolate and finally confronting the reality of her choices, was a mix of relief and deep pain. My grandmother's heart ached, but the history teacher in me knew this was the most important lesson she would learn. "Get up, Sarah," I said, extending my hand. "We won't solve anything with you on the floor." She accepted my help, her eyes swollen and red, but with a glimmer of something new. Perhaps, just perhaps, a hint of humility. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, the words choked. I was an idiot. Mark manipulated me, made me believe you were the villain, that I needed freedom. He told me you were controlling, that your money was a way to trap me, and I foolishly believed him. I led her to the living room, where she sat on the sofa, huddled. Sarah, manipulation is no excuse for cruelty. You are an adult woman with an education I paid for. You had the capacity to question, to discern. You chose to believe him because it was easier than taking responsibility for your own choices. She hung her head, tears falling silently. I know I made a mistake. I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted to be cool, independent, as Mark said. And now I've lost everything. My apartment, my car, my money, my college, and you. The last part came out as a whisper, and I realized that, for her, the loss of my support and affection was the most devastating of all. Grandma, I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have no one. I took a deep breath. The plan wasn't to destroy her, but to make her see the truth. You're not alone, Sarah. You have me. But things won't be as they were. You need to understand that love and support aren't an entitlement. They're built on respect and trust. And you broke that trust spectacularly. She looked at me with a glimmer of hope. What do I need to do, Grandma? I'll do anything. First, I said, you're going to remove every one of those photos from the internet, and you're going to post a public apology, taking responsibility for your actions. Then you're going to find a job, any job, and you're going to start paying your own bills. I won't support you, but I'll give you a roof over your head for a while, under my rules, and you're going to seek professional help to understand why you allowed yourself to be manipulated so easily. Sarah's journey to redemption began there, not with an easy hug, but with an arduous path of responsibility and rebuilding. In the following months, the Cape Cod house, once a peaceful refuge, transformed into a training ground for Sarah's real life. She removed the photos and posted a sincere apology on all her social media, explaining Mark's manipulation and the pain she had caused. The repercussions were immediate. Many of the comments, which had once been scornful, were now supportive and even admiring of her courage in admitting her mistake. Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor, was the first to call me. Mia, what a brave girl. She's really learning. Sarah got a part-time job at a local coffee shop, washing dishes and waiting tables. It was a humble job, very different from the luxurious life she used to flaunt. She complained about the fatigue, the lack of money, but for the first time, I saw her value every dollar she earned. She started therapy, and the sessions helped her uncover the patterns of dependence and the need for external validation that made her vulnerable to manipulation. She told me about her discoveries, about how Mark had exploited her insecurities, and I listened, not with judgment, but with the wisdom of someone who had seen much of life. Justice, for me, wasn't seeing her suffer, but seeing her grow, and she was growing. One day she came to me with shining eyes. Grandma, I've saved enough to pay the first month's rent for a small studio in Boston. It's simple, but it's mine. And I got an unpaid internship at a design firm I really admire. It's a chance to start over. My heart swelled with pride. It wasn't the luxurious apartment in Brooklyn, nor the expensive postgraduate degree, but it was hers, earned through her own effort. The real turning point came when one of my former students, now an influential journalist for a major Boston newspaper, sought me out. He had followed the story and was impressed by how I had handled the situation. Mrs. Mia, he said, your story is inspiring. The way you transformed a humiliation into a life lesson for your granddaughter and how she's rising again is something the world needs to hear. He published a moving article about our journey, highlighting resilience, forgiveness, and the strength of family bonds. The article went viral, and my reputation, which Sarah had destroyed, was restored, not just as the respected teacher, but as a woman of unshakable character. Sarah, in turn, was praised for her honesty and courage, and the design internship turned into a full-time job. The humiliation she caused me unknowingly set the stage for her own downfall, but also for her rise and for my own public redemption. Today, 5 years have passed since that terrible day. Sarah, now 27, is a talented and respected graphic designer in Boston. She has her own apartment, a modest car she bought herself, and a life built on hard work and integrity. Our Sunday lunches have returned to being a sacred tradition, full of laughter and deep conversations. She still calls me for advice, but now it's about career, healthy relationships, about how to be a better person. Grandma, she told me the other day, as we had tea on my Cape Cod porch, I'll never be able to thank you enough. You didn't just give me a lesson, you gave me a second chance. You taught me the true value of dignity, responsibility, and unconditional love. I smiled, holding her hand. You learned, my dear, and that's what matters. Life sometimes presents us with challenges that seem insurmountable. The pain of betrayal, public humiliation, the feeling of being discarded by those you love most. But as I learned, even from the ashes of our reputation, we can rise again, stronger and wiser. Sarah's and my story is a testament that forgiveness, resilience, and the ability to learn from mistakes can transform the worst experiences into opportunities for growth. And you who have accompanied me on this journey, have you ever found yourself in a situation where pain turned into strength? Have you ever had to teach a difficult lesson to someone you loved? Share your story in the comments, leave a like if this narrative touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that make us reflect on the true value of life and human relationships.